Good evening, everyone. So, guys, in the previous session, we have covered till here what is your regions and availability zone, right? Under AWS account creation, cloud computing, and cloud models. So, in cloud computing, and only there are few more topics. I know again these are the theoretical topics, but I need to tell you all these things. Then only we can move ahead with the next topic. Where so these are the networking concepts which I'll be taking you through in the next class. So today we'll finish whichever the pending topics are there under this day two, right? Under cloud computing and cloud model, guys, right? So yes. So why do we need cloud? So anyone can give me, though see here it is mentioned, I know, though it is clearly mentioned over here. Let me make it bigger. Yeah. So why do we need cloud? Means from your point of view, there are some points which I'll explain, but from your point of view, in a single liner, if you want to say anything, why do we need cloud? Means you have to tell the
No,
advantages. Yeah, please
no
go ahead.
hardware investments, right? No hardware investment.
Very
Okay,
good.
and pay as you go. You can say
Correct.
that is one of the most advantage of cloud. These two I know, and high availability because in data center sometimes if something goes wrong, data center goes down, service goes down, right? In cloud, it's high availability, high scalability.
Hmm,
Those things
hmm,
are the advantages here.
correct. Anyone else?
Sir, we can access our data sitting any corner of the world cloud.
Come up again, Devi.
Sir, we can access our data or document sitting any corner of the world. Uh, that also one benefit of cloud.
Okay. Anyone
सर
else?
वन इज मोर यस सर
Yeah,
एक
yeah.
चीज जो इम्पोर्टेंट है जैसे कि
Hmm,
जो हमारा सर्वर जो जैसे हमें सर्वर सेटअप करने में जो कॉस्ट लगता है
hmm, hmm.
तो वो उसमें हमें उतना कॉस्ट नहीं लगेगा सर वो हमारा बचेगा
Correct. So what Sayantan said, you are you are telling the same thing, Sumit, right? So yes, let me tell you, we'll go through one by one. Okay. So as you can see here, the first thing is that trade capital expense for variable expenses. Okay. So instead of having to invest heavily in the data center and servers, before you know how you are going to use them, you can only pay when you consume computing resources and only pay for how much you consume. So from day one, I am telling you, see, if you see this diagram in the previous, right, I think in the day one also I told you. So whenever you have to set up a data center, okay, so there is a capital expenditure involved for that one, right? Yes or no, guys? Correct. So there
Yes.
is a capital expenditure for that one. But when you talk about the cloud, so you no need to worry about the infrastructure, right? So there is no capital expenditure is involved. So as per your requirement, suppose you only need compute service, you don't need any other services, so you have to only pay for the compute services. So under compute, suppose if you have created a VPC, if you have created a VPC, right? So in the VPC, why if suppose I need only one VM, guys, correct? I need only one VM. So for one VM, one security group, right? There will be a inbound, outbound volume will be there for this VPC one VM. There will be hardly one EBS volume will be there. So it is totally as per your requirement. So pay and go. Same way, I have given you the example also previously that if you have to go, if you have to travel within 5 kilometers, so you are going to take the service of a auto, right? Which is a cheaper compared to a mini, right? Ola services, right? If you see, auto will cost you less compared to a mini, right? But when you have to travel a longer distance, and when you have only you are only traveling, and you are traveling with your family, right? So in that case you are going to take a mini. But if you have to travel to a airport, so in that case you have a luggage and you have a family, right? And you have to travel a longer distance, right? So in that case you need a comfort, and according to that you will take a sedan. If you have to go out station, then you are going to take a SUV with your family and friends and relatives, right? Same way here also, whatever your consumptions of resources, means if your application is not a large application, it's only you are a small scale industry, okay, you are only a SME, you are a small industry or a startup only, who is starting from application, who hardly requires 2 VM, who hardly requires some 20 GB of space. I'm just telling you as an example for a normal, right? So you only have to pay for those resources and all. You don't need a very S3 bucket and all, where you have to store big files and all, right? So you no need to pay for those resources. So pay and go. So that is what it is mentioned over here, that trade capital expense for variable expense. So instead of having to invest heavily in the data center, that is what in the previous one, you no need to worry about the physical servers, the rack and stack servers, the servers, the networking devices, the switches and all. You have to pay only for the resource which you are going to consume for your application, and or I can say for your three-tier architecture. Basically, in three-tier architecture, your web layer, your application layer, and your database layer will be coming. This is the minimum requirement to host a application, guys. Okay. Now coming back to the next benefit from the massive economies of scale. So by using cloud computing, you can achieve a lower variable cost than you can get on your own, because uses from hundred of thousands of customers are aggregated in the cloud. Providers such as Amazon Web Services can achieve higher economies of scale, which translate into lower pay as you go prices. Means what it's telling. See, when you are going to use a service of something, so obviously the cost will be low, right? If you see a AWS, so when a AWS market share is much more compared to Azure and GCP, right? So obviously, if your market share and the where AWS market share is around, I would say like more than 80%, but it's coming down also. But anyways, so when the number of I would say companies who are onboarding to AWS and using their services, the prices will automatically come down, guys, right? So this is why it's telling that the big cloud service provider like Amazon and so benefit from massive economies of scale. Means massive means when you see, I think recently also a data came, right, where I think some lakhs of startup, right, registered this year, right, in India, from India. Correct. There are so many startups which is registered, and even in Bangalore only, there are more than 65,000 companies, IT companies are there. So, guys, you can understand when the scale, right? When the economy is scaling up, basically, it is scaling up, right? You are scaling out, means when it's growing in number. So, obviously, the services cost will come down, right? Because more and more people want those services, right? If less people will be there, obviously demand will be less, supply will be less, right? So the services, the cost will be more. Correct, guys? Right? So I'll give you a practical example of this one. If you how many of you, I don't know, don't this one, that from Bangalore, okay, if you have to go to Kempagoda International Airport, there is a rail service also, guys. Okay. So there is a railway station also there, and it's hardly from the Kempagoda International Airport railway station is there. But if you know, if you want to understand the stats, so there is hardly a very less people yearly who is taking that train. Correct. So government is providing the service, but people consumer has to use according to that only your economic grow, right? They are using other services. They are using either cab services, they are using bus services, right, to reach out to airport, but they are not using train services. Correct. So this is what it might be. There are many reasons for that one, but this is just an example I am telling you. It depends upon totally how your economies scale up. So when you see number of startups will be registering every year, so obviously these services price will come down. Okay, because most of them are going to use the same services. So now the third point is stop guessing capacity. This is the most important thing. See, when you talk about this capital expenditure, when you have to set up a data center, so suppose for your application only, right, if you read this one, just read this one. Eliminate guessing on your infrastructure capacity needs. When you make a capacity decision prior to deploying an application, you often either end up sitting and on expensive idle resources or deadline with limited capacity. With cloud computing, these problems go away. Obviously, you can access as much as little as you need and scale up and down as very simple. So I'll give you a very practical example of this one. Suppose you have hosted a application. I am just talking about the railway IRCTC website only. Okay, so you know when normally, for this is just an example I'm telling you. Okay, so if your IRCTC website is hosted on 4 to 5 servers, correct? So in a normal day, the traffic, when there is no heavy traffic, okay, but when there is a heavy traffic is coming to and hitting to IRCTC website for the Tatkal ticket booking, so obviously at that time we need more VMs, right? So for that we have a service called auto scaling, guys. So as per the requirement, so obviously you have to set a threshold, the minimum number of VMs, the maximum number of VMs, and what is the threshold and all, right? So in that case, the VMs automatically there are more VMs will be created, right? So that they can handle that particular traffic at that hours, right? When they see when the Tatkal tickets are booking during that time, okay, if you need more like 100 of VMs also, so it's going to scale out, means number of VMs is going to create it automatically, and those VMs are going to take the load of that particular traffic at peak hour. So this is the best example that we no need to guess anything. You just, so you no need to worry. Okay, suppose if I have to host application, so I need, okay, which server is required, how many switches are required, what all networking devices are required, how much storage is required. You just go, even you can later on, the services are there, according to that those services is automatically going to take care of your application. If it's required, if there are heavy traffic, and if it's required more, I would say more end users are reaching out to your application, they are trying to use your application, so you no need to worry for that one. So this is the biggest example of, I would say, so of cloud, guys. Okay, so where you no need to guess before. Okay, even you deploy, after that also you can make changes as per your requirement. Clear? Any doubt? Any doubt, guys? No, right. So increase speed and agility. Okay, what do you mean by increase speed and agility? Now, so in a cloud computing environment, new IT resources are only ever a click away, which means you reduce the time it takes to make those resources available to your developer from week to just minutes. These result in a dramatic increase in agility for the organization, since the cost and the time it takes to experiment and develop is significantly lower. Obviously, this is very simple, and increase speed and agility because you have a public cloud first of all, so everything in the cloud, so you no need to worry about that one. If your developers are there who is working on an application, who is developing your application, they are going to access that application from anywhere, right? So if they are working on a particular module and all, so if a developer who is sitting in India, if a developer who is sitting in California, if a developer who is sitting in Netherlands, so everyone can get the access of that particular application of any of its module, right? Because all the DevOps tools which you have to host, which is required, either it's a GitHub repository, right, or it's any of the repository where you are going to store your codes and all, right, which it's going to be in your cloud, correct? Right? And at the same time you can provide the security also. So that is what, so the type of application which you are developing, okay, so you are going to store those codes in your GitHub only, and that GitHub you are going to install on top of your Linux operating system, and that Linux operating system is hosted on cloud, correct? Correct? Correct, guys? The VMs which you are going to create,
Yes.
suppose you have to install GitHub, right? Obviously, so you have to create a VM for that one, right? So where that VM is hosted, on your cloud only, so anyone can access that one from any part of the world. So that is what it is telling, the speed and agility, okay. So it gives you the speed also, that everybody can get the access. And if suppose you need number of VMs more, okay, in that case, where you have to increase the high availability, right? Suppose if that VMs which is hosted the GitHub where your codes are there, if it goes down, so there is a other zone where the same duplicate VM is available with the all. So obviously we have different branches, right? But if in case your VM goes down, then how you are going to, right, uh, access those codes and all? So for that you have something called edges, right? Availability zones. So, and we also call this, I don't say we call this one, but yeah, it's something like high availability. Okay. But it's all about how you are going to increase the speeds and all. So this is what it is mentioned over here at last. For organizing, the cost and the time takes to experiment and develop is significant lower. Obviously, if suppose, so anyone can work on that particular code from anywhere, right? Irrespective of the location, correct? So stop spending money on running and maintaining data center, right? That is what I said. If you see the traditional IT, where you have to manage the application, the runtime, or uh, basically these are the things: the security, the database, and the server, right? These are the points where you have to manage the server hardware, the network, the storage devices, the networking devices, and all. So you no need to worry for this one, right? For these also, suppose your rate gets failed, so in the data center, so do you have to worry for that one? No, right? So earlier, what normally, obviously there are some hardware rates also, rate 0, rate 1, rate 3, 5, and all like this. So those will be taken care by the cloud service provider only. So you no need to worry. So that is what, focus on the project that differentiate your business, not the infrastructure. You no need to worry about that one, because it is completely different if you see the IAS, the PAAS, and the SAAS, right? So in traditional IT, we have to take care of each and everything, but in cloud, we no need to worry about the infrastructure. So cloud computing lets you focus on your own customer rather than heavily lifting of racking, stacking. This is what I'm talking about. You no need to worry if suppose any of the servers are not working, any of the disk is not working, right? And powering server, that is the biggest challenge. If you talk about the powering a server, that requires, I said there are cooling devices are there, guys. When you go to data center, I have been to data center when I was in HP. So they have a big data center in Bangalore, in Madhapura. Okay, so in that one, if you go inside, you'll feel like where you came. It's some kind of a generator. Okay, so it's that requires a lot of equipments to cool down your data center. Cooling is more important because a huge heat will be involved when those heavy servers are running, okay, so there is a immense heat will be coming out of that one. So you need to take care. So everything, the electricity, everything, the powers, the how much power is consuming, it has to be stable. You no need to worry of all those things. You see your system only. It gets heated, then obviously you are putting some fan bottom of your laptop, right? We used to buy some fans and all, cool down your laptop. If it's run continuously for 24 hours, there is a heat will be coming out of it, correct? So that is the biggest challenge. So go global in a minute easily, first of all. So because it's a cloud, right? So it is accessible by public. So immediately, as soon as when you deploy your application in multiple regions, you know, so there are, for example, I am telling you, you can deploy here. If you see these regions, right? So immediately you can go ahead and deploy in North Virginia, US East, right? In the California, or if you talk about in India, it's in Asia, Mumbai is there, South Korea, Seoul is there. So if you want to launch your application at multiple locations, that you can do it without any uh, restriction. Correct. So that is what it is mentioned. Easily deploy your application in multiple regions around the world. Just with a few clicks, you can do it. You just need to create those VMs, and you need to install your application on those VMs. That's it. And you no need to do for all the reasons. So you see, you know something, there is cloud formation, guys. Terraform is there, right? So you can use the same code, same module, right? That is what called automation. Terraform and cloud formation is exactly same. You have to use the template only. You have to use the TF file, tf.var file only. If you have to create the same infrastructure at Mumbai, and if you want to create the same infrastructure, suppose I have created a template where I have to deploy where I have to deploy 11 VMs with all the configuration, means how much CPU is required, what will be the security group. So I will create a standard template, or I will going to create a main.tf file if you talk about in Terraform, and I only need to change the values, right? Same thing you can do it with the cloud formation. You have to create a template. Irrespective of the regions, you can deploy those templates. Same template, you can take it and you can deploy to Seoul, you can deploy to Sydney, you can deploy to Tokyo. Within a seconds, within a click, your infrastructure is ready. Correct? So that is the biggest advantage, guys. Experience for your customer simply and minimal cost. Okay. So this is why why we need cloud. Okay. These are the main reasons. And if somebody is asking you in the interview, please let them know. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. What is cloud computing? Okay. So cloud computing is means the use of remote servers on the internet to store, manage, process data rather than a local server. Cloud computing. First of all, what is cloud? Now I'll relate the things. It is easy for you. What is cloud, guys? What is cloud? Means you are data center of multiple or data center or multiple data center of your compute and resources connected by a network. What is cloud computing? Where you are connected to a network, means you are managing a remote server for your compute, for your storage, for your networking. That's it. That is called cloud computing. Correct? Clear answer? Or you can give the other answer also. Cloud computing is a on demand delivery of compute power, database storage, application, and other IT resources that a cloud service platform via the internet with pay as you go, right? As per your demand, the supply will be there. That's it. For your storage, for your database, for your power, for your application, and other IT resources through cloud service platform like Amazon, GCP, and Azure. Now, other definition is also same. Okay, so I think this is fine, guys. Because cloud computing means what? You are working with a remote server only. You are not working with your local system or a local server, which is only dedicated for a you. You have connected to a public network. Okay. So cloud computing facilitates uh, why we use and all. Okay, so quick access to cost efficient and flexible IT resources. Obviously, accessing the server, database, storage, media, and variety of application services on the World Wide Web. This is what the definition of www I was talking about. So when you see a domain name, okay, so a fully qualified domain name is www.google.com. Google.com is the domain name which is going to identify by the network IP to host and host to IP. But what do you mean by www? World Wide Web means now you are connected to a World Wide Web where everybody can access your domain name. Understanding my point? And when everybody accessing your domain name, then they will be able to access your application. Correct? This is important, guys. What are the different models in cloud computing? So there are basically, I would say, two types of model only. One is service model, one is deployment model. But in DevOps, there are here ideally in cloud there are only three models. One is IAAS, PAAS, and SAAS. And in the deployment model means what type of a cloud it is. See, I have worked with private cloud. HP Helion OpenStack was a private cloud to HP, right? And there is a cloud called public cloud. What all those public clouds are, guys? AWS, where you know, right? AWS, Azure, GCP, right? Alibaba, these are your private clouds, right? So which is now this anyways I'm going to tell you. But when you talk about service model, so let's talk about this. So when you talk about service model, guys, so you need to understand, so service model is we are telling this one, okay? So infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service, correct? But if you talk about in term of DevOps, then there are four more services which you need to add as a service model. Okay, when we include DevOps tools. Okay, so in that case, Kubernetes as a service, container as a service, function as a service, and disaster recovery as a service. So these comes under your DevOps, right? And when you talk about this one as per cloud, so as per cloud only three models are there, which is if you see this one, so I have mentioned already over here, right? So the earlier the traditional IT was, which is where you required lot of capital expenditure, where you required lot of money. Because why? Because the application and the runtime, the security and integration, the database, the server, right? The rack and stack server, the virtualization, the server hardware, storage and networking, everything has to be managed by a single organization only. That is what called on-premises infrastructure, right? And now we are migrating this one from here to these services. So basically in production environment you are going to find as a infrastructure as a service only, right? Where a very less companies go with as a software, I would say software as a service. Okay, where vendor means the cloud service provider only managing everything for you, whether you only need to raise the ticket. Suppose your application is not working, okay, so I have hosted a application. For example, I am only talking about, I have created my website abhishekroshan.com, right? This one, correct? So if abhishekroshan.com, right? This is a simple website, guys, right? This is a normal website, right? Where I have hosted my courses and all, correct? So if I have to tell you, I have to host my app also, right? So how, then how I am going to host that one? So whether I should go for a infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. So where I don't want to manage anything, if anything goes wrong with my application, I have to raise the ticket with a cloud service provider only, like Amazon, GCP, or Azure. Or if anything security threat will be there, like any patching activity have to done for the operating system, or for the network, or for the code vulnerability and all, so that will be also taken care by the cloud service provider. Like recently you have seen, uh, Microsoft has outsourced his security and integration to CrowdStrike, right? So they are taking care of their patching activity, correct? So now you have to rely on the cloud service provider only. You cannot do anything. But ideally, in production environment, or a very big organization, or I would say normally they will go with this infrastructure as a service. This is the ideal case. The reason behind that one, because the application has to be taken care, because you, if you have a developers team in your company, or a tester, right? Or a DevOps engineer, correct? So this is why we hire all sort of roles where the servers, right? Who is going to manage all the servers? Your Linux admin only. Now you will understand why we need Linux admins and all, correct? Or SRE engineer or a platform engineer, right? Database has to be managed by someone. Who is going to manage this database? Right, if suppose you are going with a infrastructure as a service, so there you are only, rest all you leave it, okay? The server hardware you no need to worry, the storage you no need to worry, the networking you no need to worry. If anything goes related to your networking, suppose if any of your device is down, still you cannot reach out to those devices and all, right? From your end you can troubleshoot, but if any hardware failure will be there, that will be taken care by the cloud service provider. Any storage failure will be there, that has to be taken care by the cloud service provider. Any networking devices fail, that has to be taken care by the networking, the cloud service provider only. But when it's come to the server, means what? You are only creating the virtual machines, right? And you are only installing the database. You are only taking the patching activities, the vulnerability remediation and all. This is why we need the, see, with this only you understand what sort of a role is required, guys, for an organization. Where application, suppose you have created, you need developers to build the application, and you need the DevOps engineer, right? Or you would say like the site reliability engineer, right? So who is going to install those application into those operating system? And once you install, then who is going to support this application, like application support engineer, right? That role is also required. Production support engineer, your application should be running 24 into 7, right? So they are only not going to take care of your application, they also need to take care of your database also, the connectivity point of view. And the security and integration, right? Obviously, if the work of a DevOps engineer is very versatile, it's because of this model, it's because of this service infrastructure as a service. Because rarely this PaaS as a service, where only you have to manage the application, and in SaaS you no need to worry. So most of the production environment is works under infrastructure as a service. This is why our roles, this is why the jobs are safe. It's not at all about AI, guys. If the organization will move from here to here, then our jobs is no more. Then jobs will be there, but it's in cloud, because your cloud service provider only is going to hire you, where they need n number of resources to manage the client application, the client runtime, the client security integration, the client database, the client servers. Everything has to be managed by the cloud service provider. So this is why I'm keep on telling from day one, the cloud future is very good, where they required all sort of roles. And so no role is going, all these roles will be going to be there, for next 20-30 years. And for Linux, who know the fundamental of Linux, guys, I can challenge on that. Next 15 years, no, it's not going anywhere. It will not go, guys. How you can eliminate your cloud? Because your networking, your storage, your server hardware, your everything is running on cloud. How AI is going to replace this one? So, guys, this is why if you are working with all these roles, whether a application support engineer or a production support engineer or a Linux admin role or a site reliability engineer, right? Or a platform engineer or a DevOps engineer or a cloud engineer, all these roles will be there. Don't worry about that one. Okay. Your job is not a problem. The problem, again, I'll tell you, it's with the developer only. Okay. Correct. Understanding my point, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, so you guys have understand what is a IAS, what is a PAAS, and what is SaaS, right? Again, I'll tell you traditional IT where you have to manage all these layers, or you can say all these means application or your runtime or the security integration, your database, your server virtualization, server hardware. But in infrastructure as a service, application has to be managed by you only. It has to be runtime has to be managed by you only, right? The security integration has to be managed by you only. The database has to be managed you only. The server has to be managed by you only. Okay. And the PaaS and SaaS, there are some models even in my this is normally we do even PaaS model only we were following. I remember in HP at that time when we were using the I would say the private cloud, guys. Okay. So these are the basically service model, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. Now we'll talk about the deployment models. This is important: public cloud, private cloud, and a hybrid cloud. So with this diagram, you can understand what do you mean by public cloud. So obviously, elasticity, utility of pricing, leverage expertise. Right. So a public cloud will be accessible by everyone, like world WWW, World Wide Web. Correct. A public cloud is accessible by everyone. When you have hosted an application, so you know there is a three-tier architecture, guys, right? So in the three-tier architecture, for example, I am telling you, so in the three-tier architecture, there is a web layer, guys. So obviously, this is going to expose to your public cloud. There will be a application layer. So your application front end is going to exposed, or I would say, see, obviously the application is going to host in the private cloud only in your VPC virtual private cloud, but the IP is going to expose to the public cloud. Understand this one. If you see here, for example, when you are going to create this one, when you see this one, guys, okay, so when you create a VM, okay, immediately I'm just trying to understand you this one. So let's create a VM. So I think it's already running. Oh my god. Oh my god. I did not stop it. Okay, guys, don't do like I think last it's been 3-4 days, right? So now I am going to there will be a consequences of this one because a volume is attached, though it's a free service. But if I have running this one, okay, so there is a volume attached to this one and there is a charge for that one. So whenever you don't need this VM because you are using it for your learning purpose, right, for your practice and all, immediately terminate these VMs, guys. Immediately terminate these VMs. Even if you stop also, there will be a charging involved for this one. I can guarantee you on that one. Because the volume, obviously they are going to charge. They are giving the services, you can create the free tier, right? The VMs, but there is a volume attached to it, correct? So for that volume, you have to pay it. So, anyways, that is fine. I'll see this one. So here, if you see, guys, okay. So if you see, there is a public IPv4, yes or no? Correct. And there is a private IPv4. Why this is like this? Because this public IPv4 is your public IP means it is exposed. It is World Wide Web means if you have to access this VM, so you can access this VM with this public IP. But there is also a private IP mapping for this one. So your application will be going to use this private IP only. But since there is a public to private IP mapping should be there, right? So then only you are going to access this particular virtual machine. And this is what I am talking about here. Correct? Means you are that a public cloud is how it works, right? When you talk about this three-tier architecture, correct? This one, though your application layer is hosted in a private cloud, but the IP is used for this application in the web layer is exposed to public cloud. And finally, anyways, your database is going to be always in a private network. Then only you can safeguard your database, guys. Correct? Any doubt? And private cloud is obviously, so private cloud is basically only strict to a organization level. Okay. So when I was working on a HP Helion OpenStack, so it is only available for the clients who is requested. Suppose if you are a client to GCP, correct? There are many organization who is client to GCP, who is client to Azure, who is client to AWS, right? So in that case, they have their own private cloud, which you can call it as a intranet, which is only accessible by those set of people who works, which is only accessible by those set of people who works for a particular organization, and the organization have full control over that cloud. Correct? The organization have, suppose if you have a private cloud, your intranet, so only those, suppose, see, if you are working for any of the XYZ organization, right? Right? So obviously, if you have to connect to that, if you are working to some of the servers, for example, I am telling you, right, there are few things which is publicly accessible. There are some applications where publicly accessible. Yes or no, guys? Correct. So for I'm just talking about how a private cloud is different from a public cloud. Just try to understand here. Okay. So you can take an example. This is a very simple and easy example. Okay. Ola. Fine. Flipkart. Correct. There are many. Amazon.in. Right. There are many. Correct. So what I am telling is for the end user, there is a public cloud. Yes or no? So if you have to access the Ola URL or the Ola services, the Ola app. So for the end user, for the consumer, there is a different URL, correct? But a employee who works under Ola, right? So for them, there will be a private cloud. That is what called intranet, which is only accessible by the employees of that particular organization, right, guys? Correct? Or Amazon.in, any of the services, correct? And which is having full control by that particular organization. So there should not be any data leak, right, outside the organization. So this is why total control, there will be a regulation, right? There will be policies, right? And the flexibility is also there. But it is totally controlled by that XYZ organization. Now this is something community cloud. You know open source and all, right? Correct? How it is different from public cloud, because here you know it's almost meet shared concern, right? So when you see a community, right, where a similar interest of people is going to join. Suppose you are interested in Linux, right? Somebody is interested in DevOps, somebody is interested in only cloud classes, correct? So I am going to create a community only for the people who is interested in Linux, right? So where I am going to create for them. At the same time, it should be it should not be merged with the people who is interested in only DevOps and who is interested in only in cloud, correct? Cloud trainings and all. Suppose I want a community where only same set of people, right, who wants to learn Linux and shell scripting, and their doubts and concern will be handled within those community. So that is what call your community cloud, guys. So community cloud is basically for a dedicated community you are creating, right? So this I have not mentioned, but this is something, and only three types of models will be deployment models will be there: your public cloud, private cloud, and hybrid cloud. In hybrid cloud, so this is the best example which I have given you just now. So the hybrid cloud best example is what? Can anyone tell me? Can anyone tell me? The best example of this one is
You are having a data center as well as uh, what can I say?
their
That is a
application
private
is.
cloud.
No, the best example you can understand from his your on premises is your private cloud. Okay, that is what I said just now. It is only controlled by that particular organization. But when you are migrating the same thing, correct, or there is a connectivity. So as of now, you are not going to immediately migrate, right? So if there is a connectivity from your on premises, right, to your public cloud, that is your hybrid cloud. Correct? Understanding my point, guys? No, yes, yes, no.
So please come again.
So what I am telling is, so just take an example of, for example, I am telling you. So hybrid cloud is, see, what is private cloud? Private cloud, as I said, it's like a intranet. Correct? I have given you the example. Correct? So private cloud is a very practical example is that suppose you have developed a product. Fine. You have developed a product. You have your intranet. You have your own VPC. You have your own private cloud. Correct? Which is managed by your employees only. Correct? But now, if you have to make that application public, then you are going to expose that application to the public cloud. Understanding my point? Yes or no again?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right? So that application has to be exposed to the public cloud. Then we call it as a, if you are only using a application for the organization purpose. Suppose there is an employee system. Okay? Like just understand my thing is there is an employee system, right? So you can take an example of this one, Accenture. Okay, so suppose two things are there, guys. Just try to understand here. So there is a portal for the employees also. If suppose I have to refer you, correct? Any one of you, whether Vishal, whether Yogesh and all, right? So I can directly go ahead and I can refer you guys as per my, because I am also having a system inside the organization or the portal where I can refer you, correct? Yes or no? Guys, tell me yes or no,
Yes, sir.
right? But that
Yes, sir.
portal is accessible by you? No. It is only accessible by the employee who is working in that organization. Correct? But suppose if you are exposing the same portal outside, means they are only going to expose few of its feature where Yogesh and Vishal has option to register to Accenture website for the job roles, so they can do it. Correct? So there are two things. The best example you can understand from the job portal only, guys, where a employee can also refer you who works for that organization, and even you can also register to that particular roles. Understanding my point? That is called your hybrid cloud. Means you are exposing the same portal to the public IP to the public, right? That is what we are doing. Not understanding? Yes? No?
Hey, sir, someone here.
Okay.
Yeah, got it, sir.
So, it's the same thing it is written here, guys. The service of offers has been divided into three different models. Let's discuss each one of them, which I have already discussed. Infrastructure as a service. Okay, so infrastructure as a service, this is the abbreviation for this IaaS, contains the basic building block of cloud IT, typically providing access to the networking features and all. This, anyways, it is a theory which I have already told, right? So, it is also known as a hardware as a service. Okay, infrastructure as a service is also known as a hardware as a service. Source AWS, for example, AWS web services is like IaaS, like AWS EC2. So this is just a definition. Okay, an example it is mentioned, for the past, this service would make sense to you only if you are a developer. So this is why I'm telling you, for a software as a means infrastructure as a service, okay, it is most of the production environment works under infrastructure as a service, right? But where we are going to use as a PaaS, so it's only target for the developers. And see why it is target for the developer, guys. You can understand from here clearly. As I said, so who is involved for the application? Are you involved being a infrastructure, being a SRE engineer, or being these people, right? So is there any role for you in this organization where only application is has to be taken care by the organization? Means the development part, yes or no? Correct, right?
Yes, sir.
So this model is only
Right, sir.
valid for the developers. Okay. And when you see SaaS, okay. So let's go to the SaaS. So for example, Salesforce, right? Where Salesforce, you have seen of CRM system, right? Customer relationship manager, where you no need to worry, you only need to learn, I think those modules, right? You no need to worry about the application, you no need to worry about, there is a huge demand of Salesforce nowadays, right? People are learning Salesforce. Why? Because they want to don't deal with the technical stuff, right? Correct. There is no technical things has been. See, I have given Salesforce is like a ERP system, guys. Enterprise resource planning, where customer relationship manager. Okay, and enterprise resources planning means like you're complete. You know, in SAP there is ABAP tools styles. You have heard of this one, SAP, correct? SAP is widely used across world, right?
Yes, sir.
Same way like Salesforce is widely used, guys, nowadays. There is a huge requirement of Salesforce. You no need to worry about the application. You no need to worry about your runtime, your security, your database, your server, your virtualization, the server hardware, the storage, and the networking. Everything has to be taken care by the cloud service provider. So if you don't want to do any of this, go ahead and learn Salesforce. No, seriously, I'm telling you, huge demand of Salesforce is there. If you don't want to deal with any of this, but that also required experience to work in this Salesforce on a cloud infrastructure to its client and charges them, right, from for it. But the software is owned by, is there, yeah, but the software is owned by the Salesforce company only, because they only build this application, but they have given this application completely, the each and everything they have outsourced, right? This is the best example for a SaaS. So remember, okay, for if somebody is asking you, can you give me an example for SaaS? Salesforce is the best example where everything is outsourced to the cloud service provider. Everything has to be managed by the cloud service provider. Okay, they have built this application, but they have outsourced the complete application to a cloud service provider where everything has to be managed by the cloud service provider only, like Azure, GCP, or AWS. Correct? Deployment model public, as I said, a public cloud is essentially is for www, correct? It is ideal for sharing non-secured application and testing application codes, right? In public cloud deployment mode, the services which are deployed are open for public use, and generally public cloud services are free, right? Public cloud is offering for economy of scale. That is what I said, correct? If you have to expose your application to the public, to the www, World Wide Web, you have to use the public cloud. You are not exposing the application, guys. You are basically it's exposing of your IP only. There will be a public IP, there will be a private IP. So that private to public IP mapping will be there. That's it. Windows example will be Windows Azure Service Platform, Amazon EC2 Elastic. That is what I said. Your VM is the best example, and this is why I have shown you this example, right? Your VM is the best example where you can see there is a public IP for this VM and there is a private IP for this VM, correct? Private cloud is operated solely for a single organization, and it can be done by the same organization or a third party organization, but usually the costs are high when you are using your own cloud since the hardware would be updated periodically. Security also has to be kept in check since new threats come up every day, right? It is ideal for large enterprise project that demands better control and security. For a bigger organization, I said, I have given you the example also where we need this one, where you have more than lakhs of employees, correct? It helps companies to ensure provisioning, monitoring, automation, and scalability, right? Private cloud is expensive compared to public cloud, okay? And hybrid cloud is consist of functionality of both the private and public cloud. So let's understand this through an example. Suppose there is a research company, they are telling. So they would have some published data, correct? And also data which would be still in the research phase, correct? Now anything which is still in research should be kept confidential, right? Though your cloud provider may have the stages of art of security feature, but they still open to public, therefore prone to cyber attack. Now you have understand, right? I said if a job portal is there in TCS or in Infosys, right? So for the internal employees, right, they can apply also. And if the same role has to be tell to the public, correct? So being a candidate, being a job seeker, right? You can also apply for that role if that role is exposed to the public through public cloud, correct? And if it's only want to be kept that, see, it is not exposed, you don't know about that role, only the person who is working in, suppose there are openings came, guys, okay, recently, so there are so many roles, right? I am going to give you the example here, understand from this one. Now you only tell me these are the roles, okay, which is right, which is offered by Infosys, okay? So are you able to see these roles in a public platform? No, right? When it is, especially when you want to expose this role, when you want to publish this role in a public cloud, then only in the same portal from the Infosys you can apply for these roles, yes or no, correct? So if I am working for this organization, so I can apply for all these roles, right? Because, and that is where it is hosted in the public cloud, yes or no,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Best example, right? So these are the this, right? And then finally, guys, this is what I have mentioned. What is a hybrid cloud? Now you have understand. The example is there, but there are two examples I have told you. and so address this the risk. But there is a risk is also involved. That no worries, you no need to worry about that one. Okay. The risk is nothing, guys. See, suppose somebody you have seen there are so many fake mail scheme, right? Suppose if somebody will send, they can see these roles, okay? For how it is risk involved, I'll tell you. So you have seen recently that in all the organization they are telling, please be aware of the fake mails, right? Where they are sending you the mails that this role is offered to you. This is your and this is your offer letter and all. So you'll understand, no, this is coming from a legitimate organization mail ID and all, right? Well, you will be get trapped, correct? So they come to know these are the roles, so they can use of these roles, right, for the fake mails and all, for spamming you, correct, for phishing you, correct. So there is a risk involved for this one, yes or no?
Ji, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Right. And finally, guys, there is a key dates, the history of cloud computing. This is a simple thing. In 2002, AWS launches. Then they have launched some other services in 2006. EC2 in August 2006. Google App Engine April 2008. Azure Beta November 2009. There are some other datas also. This is just for knowledge purpose. And these are the some of the cloud computing providers, the cloud service provider like your Salesforce is there, Google is there, Amazon is there, Microsoft is there, Zoho is there, IBM is there, Alibaba is there. Right. So these are the cloud providers, guys. And yeah. So final summary is cloud, need of cloud, cloud computing. Cloud computing facilitates. What are the different models in cloud? We have understand different cloud providers available in market. That's it, guys. Any doubt?
No, sir.
So, guys, I'm ending up the session here only. Thank you for staying connected with me. Let's connect again tomorrow for networking concepts. Till then, just take care of yourself, your loved one. Bye bye and Jai Hind.
Jai Hind, sir.
Yes.